Hey everyone, Margarita here. Today is July 11th, 2025, and I want to film this episode today just because I don't feel very good. And I haven't been feeling very good for days, and that's why it's taking me longer to release some of the videos. Even though I do have quite a few already pre-filmed, I don't release certain videos um, unless it's time to release them. So it depends on what's going on around me and the people around me and the agencies around me. Excuse me. That's what determines if when I'm going to release what videos. So what I want to talk about in this video is the ongoing symptoms I suffer from and the nature of the injury, because I do have a list of different titles to the videos that I will be talking about. And based on what's going on around me is when I decide when I'm going to be filming them. Now, what people don't seem to understand is that mine and my son's injuries are not something that happened in the past and we're okay now. It's not a one-time injury that happened for a couple days or a couple weeks or a couple months or a couple years or whatever people were perceiving at that time period or any point along the way. That was never the situation. Our injuries are permanent. They were very severe. We spiraled to where we are without proper medical care, without rest or recovery or proper treatment, just struggling in extreme state of physical distress for many years on end, day in and day out without relief. And people don't understand that. So even in the current day, that's how I'm forced to live. And because the private center is now closed, I'm not getting adequate enough treatment to keep my life flowing, even though there was never a flow never got in place properly from the time the injury occurred. And it's never gotten in place properly long term from my mother's ongoing crimes. Although I did manage a chaotic flow for almost 2 decades and managed to keep things running better than a regular person would, there was all these disruptions along the way. Once the injury became extreme, we never recovered. It's not we're okay now. It's not we're normal people now. We live modified lives. And I suffer more ongoing continuous symptoms than my son does because I've been significantly re-injured numerous times, whereas he was kept more safe at home. And the injury has been severe, extreme. So it was very extreme for a little over 3 years, from 2018 to probably shortly into 2021, I'd say. Even then, it's not we were okay then. At no time were we ever okay. It's a bunch of waves of hills of ongoing waxing and waning symptoms. And what it is that there's re-exposures. Our injuries were so extreme and we never received proper treatment or rest or recovery or anything. And all of our system was completely overloaded with carbon monoxide with brain injuries, breaking apart the brain tissue that blocks any and all toxins and chemicals from entering one's system. So that is what we were still under treatment repairing, doing the hyperbaric oxygen treatments daily, because that rapid pressurized amount of oxygen causes the blood-brain barrier to regrow internally. So that's how it regrows. I know people don't understand this when I'm saying that the brain tissue is being repaired while we're under hyperbaric oxygen treatment. That's how it repairs itself. Without that pressurized rate of oxygen, without the excessive pressurized rate of oxygen, the brain tissue does not just heal on its own. The degree of poisoning with the degree of brain injuries that I suffered from and that my son suffered from, that entire layer of the brain tissue was completely blasted away in 2018. And I believe my son's was completely blasted away during labor and delivery. But because he's been kept more safe, he was kept home for about 5 years, and he didn't go anywhere at all without getting re-injured in the manner in which I did. All these numerous times. It's been quite a few times. The problem is we can't pick up toxins or chemicals in any amounts along the way. So when there's chemtrail spraying, when there is spills of any kind, flushes of any kind, large companies spill all the time. When they do that, they flush everything through the sewer system and they lie to the public. With the Fukushima flushing, that stuff goes into the ocean. They've been flushing for a couple years now. It blankets the entire planet. There's so much that they're releasing. They're releasing it in different amounts. that takes over our systems. The wildfires, doesn't matter where it's from, eventually it makes its way to where we're at. A lot of the times, depending on how large the wildfires are, where they're coming from, that takes over our system, it all goes straight through that open brain tissue, and it adds to the carbon monoxide that's already overloaded in our cells. So my son doesn't have as extreme of daily symptoms as I do, but we still have to live modified lives, because if we're reckless with being ignorant or just walking out as if we're regular people and don't live this way, it becomes life-threatening very fast. And the reason that we're still alive is because of my own merits, my life's work, and the knowledge that I was forced to acquire along the way, suffering in the state that I've been suffering in. So I know a lot of people, when they see me now, or they're talking to me now, or they come to my house now, or I meet them in public now, or it doesn't matter if I've known them long term or not, people misconstrue the situation and just seem to think that our injuries are something that happened in the past and we're fine now. And that's not the situation at all. I live with continuous symptoms every minute of every day. I do have some periods now, where we are today, where I am okay, not really okay, but more so symptom free-ish, but it's not natural. There's things I have to do to get myself to that degree to continue on with my day. And sometimes that never even happens. Sometimes I'm still incapacitated for days or weeks. Sometimes I still have to shelter in place for days, weeks, or months. And then sometimes I'll have a few month period where it's more okay and more calm with the symptoms. And it does depend on other exposures. Just getting behind one wrong car can cause incapacitation immediately, an hour later, or the next day, or the next several days or weeks. So that's all it takes, because we literally can't have any amount of carbon monoxide whatsoever. There's many things that are problems. It's not just carbon monoxide. It's every toxin, every chemical, every particle, due to the blood-brain barrier being open. So the problem I have with other individuals, if they've heard about what happened to me, or because they never seen us in a hospital because we were never treated properly. Here we were treating an inpatient injury on an outpatient basis at a private facility, keeping ourselves homebound, and could barely get from point A to point B, could barely get from room to room in our home. People didn't see what we went through during that 3-year extreme period, because there wasn't anybody around us. I didn't have a support system. I didn't have help of any kind. My kids were in my home at that time. However, the older two were being brainwashed by malicious and jealous and envious family members. So even their perception is not correct, and their perception today of what happened those years ago is still not correct, because they've been brainwashed to say certain things that just aren't true. So beyond that, there isn't, there wasn't anybody who saw what we went through at that time period. And then coming out of the extreme portion of that, because the extreme portion was very extreme. I literally was incapacitated for about 3 years straight. Literally could not leave my toilet for about 10, 12 hours a day, and could not get from room to room in my home without extreme symptoms. I literally lived with continuous brain swelling every second of every day, with the knots of carbon monoxide loaded up inside my brain, in fist-sized knots all up in my brain that you can feel. It's very painful. It's not some minor issue. And on top of it, because it broke through the brain tissue, the carbon monoxide had flooded our entire system and then settled into all of our cells from not being removed during the initial medical emergency, during the initial overload. Any little particle that goes in and adds to that flows up and down again today. So if I were to just take one breath, it loads up in my brain. Depending on what the parts per million is, or how long it lasted, or if it's a minute or 2 or 10, which usually doesn't happen to that degree. But it can, because there's other people are ignorant and don't want to believe that we're as injured as I say we are. If that happens, yes, I become incapacitated shortly after. And usually if it's that extreme of a exposure, then I stay that way for days to weeks. Now, the problem with people like perceiving our situation, just people in our everyday lives, it doesn't matter. They still think that we're just regular people. We wake up every day and go about our day. That's still not the situation. It's never been from the time the injury occurred. We went from a very extreme state of suffering near death, and extreme physical pain and suffering, extreme incapacitation, extreme physical distress. It was literally every second of every day for those 3 years, and then spiraled out of it, barely getting to the next step, extremely fragile. And then another large spill had forced us from our home months after we had finally crossed that first threshold. And then that went on for 2 years in that extreme manner, to where we actually had to leave our home for about a year and a half. So because there's been numerous large spills since then, and wildfires and Fukushima flushing, and Ford Motor Company has spilled 2 more times after the initial time that we were forced from our home, just not as large of a spill. All of these different spills have played a role. It all adds to our already overloaded system. It all goes right through the open blood-brain barrier. With mine, it is only, it's this part is still open. So initially, when my brain exploded, all of it was blasted away, and it was even more extreme. But the hyperbaric oxygen treatments are what repair those cells. And I went through about 6 years at the private center of those treatments, where the chamber has a way higher pressure and a little bit more concentration of an oxygen. And it is medical grade oxygen, not using the concentrator that I have here in my home chamber. So that degree of oxygen with pressure repairs those cells in that brain tissue. And now, because that center is closed, we're forced to work with just our home chamber. And I've been trying to use other devices to make up for the lack of pressure, and other machines to help knock the stuff loose out of our systems daily while we're using this treating at home. So we're not getting the degree of treatment we once were. It's taking a lot longer to clear a cycle, because everything does come out in cycles. And the manner in which we were left with no treatment, that's how it settled into our cells, in the extreme manner that it did. So, yeah, so I had a lot of extreme nausea. Literally no break from it for about 3.5 years, 4.5, I think it was like 4.5 years. And then there was some periods of time where it was not daily anymore, but it still comes in extreme waves, and it's so extreme that I become incapacitated just from the nausea alone. That's not including the other 10 or 20 symptoms that I then suffer from. With an exposure of any kind, 10 to 20 symptoms happen from that. And then there is periods of incapacitation, where we are today with it. Initially, it was just continuous extreme 50, 60 severe symptoms at once without relief. Ooh, excuse me. So now, where I am today, 10 to 20 symptoms after each exposure, and incapacitation for hours, days, weeks, or it could be months, depending on what's going on, if we're still treating. Going forward, where I am right now, I don't think we're going to stop treating, although I did take a little break this week. There was numerous reasons for that. But with where I have things right now, treatment should not be stopping. But at the same time, we do need an upgraded chamber system. So that's got to be brewing in the background while I'm taking care of all these other problems I have on my plate. With the last couple days, I have been extremely nauseous, and just that one symptom. Usually if I'm nauseous, my head hurts really bad as well, because the particles load up in my brain first. And what it does is it adds to the already overloaded system. It also cuts off the oxygen to the brain and the cells, the whole system, depending on how much of whatever particle goes in. And then adding to that, that's what creates the nausea. You're adding a poisonous substance to somebody's system when the rest of the world has a blood-brain barrier intact. When somebody else breathes in these particles, it does not affect them, because the blood-brain barrier filters all of that out. With me, it doesn't. It goes right in, it loads right up. The only way it exits is to treat continuously, to treat every day. So when that nausea gets created, it doesn't take much. It just takes one wrong breath, and then it loads right up, and it stays. So initially, before the center was closed, for those 6 years, for about 5 of those years, we treated daily, and then 2 days a week, and then at least 1 day a week. We managed the entire time for about 5 years. And then a bunch of ignorant people caused some problems, and it turned into where we could no longer treat weekly the way we were, because we had barely stayed alive during all that time. We barely crossed each threshold. That once a week was our life or death treatment to clear what we were taking in each week, just to keep us where we were in that moment. And once we dropped down to those weekly maintenance treatments, we were still in need of additional daily treatment going forward. The problem was it was all self-pay. And so I had to take a break from the continuous daily treatments, which we had done for a very long time to get us to where we were, because it was so expensive overall. I spent almost 200 grand out of pocket in the end. So because of that, it slowly caused us to slip away once all that happened. And we slowly slipped away because then we were not treating once a week at the center anymore. So that caused a lot further issues. And it's been about 1.5 to 2 years since the once a week treatments have stopped. And it caused a lot further issues. So where we are today, we're actually further behind where we were like 2 to 3 years ago. Because of the lack of treatment, we still have to keep the flow going for our systems to continuously process the overload that we took in. And with my son, he's more of an experiment, because there isn't people who got exposed the last 10 weeks of pregnancy regularly for a set period of time and then gave birth while suffering from it, and then didn't receive treatment and got more exposures and then became very close to death. There isn't another situation like that. So I'm not sure exactly how many treatments it's going to take him to really fully clear it all from his system, or if it's possible, because he was being formed in utero when all that happened. With me, I do know that I'm sicker than him. I have been for quite some time. We were neck and neck at the same level for I'd say about 4 years, 4 to 5 years. We were neck and neck at about the same level. And then I significantly got re-injured, and then it happened again and again and again and again, whereas he did not. So I've been way behind him. He's been ahead of me for a few years now. And I do know I'm quite a ways away from being in a more normalized place to be able to have some type of daily functioning. I'm much worse today than I was the last. I'd say I wasn't where I was today. It's definitely been 2 to 3 years since I've been like in a better place than where I am today. So I've slowly just been slipping away. And then once the center closed and there was no more treatment at the center with the better chambers, it's really hard to get back to that. I'm not even sure it's possible without upgrading the chamber system, but I'm attempting to try this in the manner in which I've structured things and found some additional devices to help knock everything loose and help things process. That's what I've been working on. But I'm also a lot more nauseous, and I have a lot more symptoms overall. My head hurts a lot more. I do have 5 brain injuries. It's really hard to pick up the pieces of your life after one brain injury. And these are not minor brain injuries. These are all moderate to severe brain injuries. None of them were mild. So nobody generally picks up the pieces of their life after one, let alone 5. And it's only because of the amount of treatments we had at the facility that I'm even able to attempt to pick up the pieces. And I know that we're never going to have the lives that we once had. Well, my son didn't really have that life because he was born this way. I've been sick since he was born. So he doesn't see that his life is modified because he actually lives an above average lifestyle. So he's not aware that he's really missing out on anything. His life is just structured differently and it's modified. But with me, I lived a full life before all of this happened. So I already know I'm not going to be able to get back to the life that I had prior. It's not even going to be possible with the amount of injuries, with the degree of the injuries, and with the systemic injury itself. It's just not possible to do. I could treat every day in the chamber I have for the next 5 years. I'm still not going to have the quality of life that I had all those other years. So that's what I've been attempting to do. That's why the videos are kind of lagging behind. And at the same time, I was addressing all of the fallout from all my mother's ongoing crimes and all the other problems that has all created along the way, because my injury is included in those crimes. What has happened to us is a part of that. So I've been addressing all of those other issues, trying to get each avenue situated, and then that way I can maybe film a little more regularly and release the videos a little more regularly. And at the same time, I'm using numerous platforms where I then have to retell the situation, just because of how each platform is structured differently. It creates the need for me to have to redo it in a different manner. So I am trying to do all at once, while still addressing the $100,000 in damage to my home that I'm trying to finish up, and while I'm suffering a lot more symptoms and dealing with all these other matters at once. So that's why the videos are not coming out as much as they were. But I'm trying to work on getting everything situated so that can occur. But the problem is, people aren't aware when they see me today, or they come to my house today, or they just meet me out somewhere. Because initially I couldn't go anywhere for about 5 years. I didn't go anywhere. It was about 5.5 years before I really went anywhere at all. So people don't recognize, they don't realize that there is a problem, especially if they just met me and I'm out somewhere, I look normal, they don't think there's a problem. Or if people that have known me and they come to my house, or maybe they haven't known me that long, it doesn't really matter, anywhere in between, it doesn't matter who it is, they don't recognize that there's an issue. They just see that I'm normal and I'm at home, so they're not comprehending that the injury was never treated as an inpatient injury, when that's exactly what this is. This can't be treated any other way. That's why our lives are so messed up. That's why there's so much fallout. And that's why the injury, that long-term outcome of the injury, is so extreme, and there's still so many extreme symptoms, because it was never treated in the hospital the way it was supposed to be. So people don't comprehend that, or if they call me or they want to do something or they want to go here, they're not comprehending that that's not always possible for me to do. I can't always even go outside. I can't even always breathe the air that's outside. So there's a big issue with that. People just want to continue on judging on what I look like or what I have, and they're not comprehending that the injury did not happen in the past and we're fine now. That's never going to be the case. We're never going to be 100%, no matter how much treatment we have. And it's not something that happened in the past. Even back 6-7 years ago, I came across some family members, crossed paths with them, told them what happened, and then I was saying something else like an hour later about it, because what I was trying to say was that, no, we're in an extreme state of distress. This is ongoing. It's every second of every day. And then it remained that way for years from that day going forward. They weren't comprehending that when I said we got poisoned by carbon monoxide, this happened, that happened. Nobody was comprehending that this has been ongoing since that day. And at that time, it was very extreme. They still were not comprehending that extreme from the day of the injury, ongoing every second of every day. And then they'd be like, yeah, you told me about it. And I'm not saying I'm telling you again. I'm saying it's ongoing right now, every second of every day. It's not going to go away. We're in need of emergency medical treatment, because at that point, we still had not started treatment. And they were just acting like I wasn't acclimated to day and time, or that I didn't know that I told them this the hour prior, when here I am trying to say, no, we're sick permanently. We're in extreme distress. This is ongoing. It's not going to stop. I already knew it wasn't going to stop anytime soon at the time that went on. But then down the line, because now it's been years and now we've crossed several thresholds, we're still chronically sick. We're still permanently injured. That's never going to change. I've come across almost every individual that I've crossed paths with since then, and they're not comprehending that that's the situation. It doesn't go away. Yeah, I have some okay times from time to time the last few years. It doesn't last very long. It's only been a few months here or there. I'd say the last maybe 4 to 5 years, not even 5 years, not even 5. I'd say there's probably been maybe 4 to 5 several month periods where we have periods of okayness in the past like 4 years or so. So beyond that, there's still weeks where I'm incapacitated. There's still months where I'm forced to shelter in place. That is still going on. That's always going to be our situation. I don't foresee that changing now that everything that's gone on to where it is right now. I see that that's where it's most likely going to stay. So, I mean, we would just need an upgraded chamber and to treat every day for a couple of years to kind of get us back to a more normalized place. In order to add any more functioning in, I mean, we still don't have daily functioning. I don't really know that daily functioning in that manner is ever going to occur. I really just have to take the most urgent and juggle it as I go. And that's how I go about my day or my week. I try to look at things over the course of a week, and I just try to take whatever's the most urgent and address that within a day. And then I only have so much functioning, so then sometimes like that's it. But I was in an extreme state of fight or flight mode initially from labor and delivery. Then I remained in extreme state of survival mode once we overloaded with the carbon monoxide, in extreme physical pain and suffering, extreme suffocation, so many symptoms. It was just intolerable. It was not tolerable to stay alive in that manner. Nobody was comprehending that. Even when I was seeking treatment, nobody was comprehending that. So to where it is today, no, I'm not in extreme physical distress the majority of the time now. But like I said, there is still 10 to 20 symptoms at any given time. If, let's just say, I could eat the wrong thing, or drink the wrong thing, or take one wrong breath, and that's going to be my situation. Or take one wrong trip. That's all it takes. And people aren't understanding that because they don't understand the blood-brain barrier. So I did release some videos already explaining the blood-brain barrier, how it works, and what actually happened to us, because I'm having a really hard time getting people to understand that. The average person does not understand that. And that's part of how, when I'm saying that I'm permanently injured or this is what's going on, they still think I'm thinking I'm talking about the injury that happened in the past and we're just fine now. We can just go wherever and do whatever. That's not our situation. We live sick. We have to be very careful about getting in any vehicle, going any place. We can't just walk in any place. We can't just go outside at any time we want. We have to pay attention to what's in the sky, the particle level in the sky, any wildfires, any spills, any flushes. I don't need somebody to tell me if that stuff has happened, because the brain tissue is open. It goes right through. It loads right up. I feel it with every breath I take. I don't need someone to tell me anything. So that's a big issue that we're having. And with the way that I've built my life and our lives, I was able to barely hold on to everything. Being self-employed is how I barely managed to hold on to everything. But still, going forward, I still have to be self-employed. I still can't go back and work for somebody else. I'm far too sick, far too injured. That's never going to be able to happen. With where I am now, 7.5 years from the time the injury became extreme, I already know that's never going to happen for the rest of my life. It's not possible. I know what I've been through from that day to this day. I know how long it took each step of the way, and I know what has to happen going forward, and that's just not possible. So going forward, yes, to generate money, I have to stay 100% self-employed. So there does have to be some type of flow going to keep things running in the manner in which I've built them. But again, I've always had my life plans and my business plans planned out 5+ years in advance all along the way. So everything has to be carried out in the manner in which I plan them to keep things running. There's been so many disruptions and so many crimes that it's literally left our lives in shambles over and over and over again. And it's literally due to other people's actions, all of these other people's actions and their ignorance. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about like how this is not a one-time thing that happened in the past. That's not at all what's going on. That's never been the situation. We've never returned to normal. There's no way to get all of that out of our system without everyday treatment with the better chamber. I mean, we can still remove cycles. It's just taking a lot longer. But with how overloaded our systems were initially, we took in the most amount of carbon monoxide with brain injuries that any human being could possibly take in and still be alive. And people are not comprehending that. It's just really hard to explain to people. I'm sick of trying to explain it. I don't have daily functioning. I have things I have to take care of every day. Nothing's ever gotten situated from the time my child was born, from the time a couple years later almost when our injuries became very extreme. Nothing has ever been put back in place from that time. And even further back, really, nothing's been put back in place from my mother's 2013 escapade, which all led to everything going forward and everything that's happened to us, because none of that should have ever happened. I already had things planned out a certain manner, a certain way, and it should have all played out that way without disruption from outside individuals who don't know anything about me and are using court systems and police systems and agencies and people to harass me all on delusions. So it all led to all of that. Nothing's ever been put back in place to this day from 2013, technically, if you want to get technical about it. But things do have to stay flowing in order to keep everything running and keep us alive. Everything has to flow, and everything that I had planned has to be carried out step by step, and I just have to take the most urgent. But because I have so much fallout and so many separate situations and how I planned things all along before the injury became extreme, that all has to continue moving forward, or we still eventually lose our lives is the end result. If one more slip up happens, there's no room for error. There isn't room for a slip up. There isn't room for setbacks, because I have to accommodate the setbacks that of all these flushes and spills and wildfires and what these other people cause. I have to accommodate all of that all the time. So there's no room for error for me to make an error. And I just basically have to stay homebound and juggle the symptoms every day. And then if I'm just not well enough, then I just can't do anything that day or those few days or those few weeks. And it does happen. And that's kind of what's been happening the last few weeks. But I'm trying with the chamber that I have and ordering the additional machine, because I used a machine similar to this at a facility. Not the treatment center, but a different facility, and it's sort of like it. So I'm aware that it worked together, and it does work, but the cycles are taking longer to clear. So, I mean, it would literally take us a couple more years of everyday treatment to get back to where we were a few years ago. So because of the disruption, because our treatment was not maintained weekly, when it was necessary, it was always necessary. We have to have weekly treatments at the very minimum just to maintain where we're at without sliding backwards. From that time to this time, once all of that stopped, I've slowly been sliding backwards, slowly sliding downhill. Everything loads up in my system. It swells up in my brain, my entire system, all of my cells from the inside out. Everything swells up. That's why I've gained weight. That's why I look puffier. That's why sometimes it looks like I'm holding more fluid. But that's why, because everything's building up and loading up. It's not clearing. It can't clear without the ongoing treatment. And because we don't have treatment at the center, we're using my home chamber. It's taking a lot longer to clear just one cycle. So with that home chamber, though, we do need to use it minimally 3 times a week, not one. So it does take quite a bit of time out of our day to do these things, to get our systems flowing and try to get the cycles cleared. And it's just something I have to stay up on. And it's really taking 5-6 hours out of every day for the both of us to complete all of this, to even begin to address anything else in a day. So that is part of the issue that I've been having. Although things are moving forward, they're just not moving as fast as I would like them to. I think part of the problem is I was always extremely motivated. I was always very high functioning all those other years prior to me being injured. So in my mind, I expect a certain degree of progress, which deep down I know is never going to be the way it used to be. And I'm never going to get that much stuff done in the manner in which I used to. I know that. But that's what I've been trying to do. And it's taking so much time out of every day that it's like cutting into me filming the videos. It's cutting into me doing this task or that. Like I said, things have been moving. They have been running, but it's just not as fast. And by the time I get things moving with the different things we have to do every day, it's like half the day is already gone. So I try to keep a schedule for it, although it doesn't always work. I can't seem to get anything on any type of regular schedule. And here I am just trying to juggle as it comes. And at least some significant progress with the homeowner's insurance and what's going on with the work with the house. Yes, that's been made, because that's a big step in getting everything back in order to continue moving forward. But if things slow down too much and if I get too sick, then it's going to cause a very extreme issue. And there isn't room for that error. So I'm trying to prevent that from happening. And the other problem is with the 5 brain injuries, it's both. It is the carbon monoxide poisoning at a cellular level and the brain injuries. Because most people with carbon monoxide poisoning, it doesn't go into their entire system, flood their whole system, and settle in at a cellular level. Usually they get treatment or they're removed. And with us, it was very extreme. That did not happen with us. So with all of those brain injuries, it's causing like an issue with the functioning and how much I can do in a day. It's very taxing on the brain doing all these different tasks. And if I'm doing work on my computer or paperwork or filming videos, that takes brain power. So it takes more power, and it's very exhausting. It's tiring with the brain injuries. Driving is another one as well. So there can only be so much driving in a period of time. It used to be in a day. It used to be extremely bad. I could literally only go absolutely where I had to and back, and I really could not go further than an hour for the first 3 years of my injury. It was about 3.5 years. And it could never be more than that. I couldn't go more than one place. I couldn't even get to the grocery store. Everything was very messed up. So today where I'm at with it, that is still the situation. It is still very taxing doing all of these tasks and all these things I have to do, that it's taxing on the brain. And then once I get a certain amount of things done, then I can't do other things. I only have so much physical power within a day. And then if I try to overexert myself and just do too much, then I take a bigger step back, and I'm pretty much laid out for a couple days or more. It can be a couple days or more if I try to force myself to do more than my body and my brain allow me to, due to the amount of brain injuries. Now, if I'm doing something that's making me sweat and I'm like working really hard, or if I'm like feeling okay enough to where I'm doing something, working on something that's more of like a workout type of thing. I'm not really working out, but there's things that I have to do it's kind of strenuous, or it's more like a workout. If I'm doing something like that and I'm actually sweating, I feel a lot better, as long as I'm not taking in any toxins or particles while that's going on. I actually feel a lot better sweating, because that is how some of the carbon monoxide gets removed. It will get removed through sweat. So if I can comfortably do those tasks, that doesn't necessarily wipe me out as much as, let's just say, paperwork or something I'm doing on the computer where I'm using my brain. That tends to wipe me out more than me actually physically sweating. Now, there is still a limit. I still can't just like overdo it, because then at the same time, yes, it will cause me to have a setback. So the goal is to not have any setbacks. And initially, coming out of the extreme part of the injury, where I was still very fragile for the first year or two, after the extreme part of the injury, so I'd say like year 4 and year 5, there was still a lot of significant setbacks, and there was more re-injuries as well. But me pushing myself to do just one little bit more than I can, it would cause an extreme setback. And then I'd be way further back than I was had I just not done anything at all. And then what was happening at that time period is I was still working regularly every weekend, or at least, because that was my main goal. I had to make sure that that was done so everything could stay running, even though that's all I did was work those weekends, no other days. I just had to make sure that that was done at the very least every week, because without that, everything crashes. So when that was going on, I had to make sure that was gotten to first and foremost, regardless if anything else was ever gotten to. And then I would try to address other little things here or there. But still, it was causing setbacks, because if there was too many setbacks, or I tried to do too much of something closer to when I was supposed to be working, then it would cause an extreme setback, or I wouldn't be able to work. So then that causes things to crash. So all along the way, it's been a very fragile situation, physically, technically, mentally, and emotionally, but it's physical, which then trickles down and creates the other issues. And then financially, it creates those issues. It's a physical problem. So where I am today, it's just not as bad, or I'm more so getting used to it, but it's still a problem. I still can't overdo it, because then there's a giant setback. I can't have any more setbacks, and I'm no longer working those weekends the way I was. So my energy is more spaced out throughout the course of the week in all these other tasks, because out of the major tasks, I can only address one major task at a time. So while that's going on, I have things shifting around at the same time because I'm self-employed, and this was all planned years in advance. So that's what I've been trying to do. It is a lot. It's hard for people who've never had a brain injury or who's never had a very serious chronic condition to even comprehend what I'm saying or where I'm coming from. And then when I've told people along the way, it doesn't matter what point during the injury, yes, it's an issue. Me trying to tell people that my poisoning wasn't a one-time thing that happened in the past. We're chronically sick. We're permanently injured. These effects go on every minute of every day. We have to watch what we do every minute of every day. Our lives have to be modified. There's so many steps involved in what's going on, and people just don't comprehend it. So that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been trying to do. I did want to address talking about how people just keep thinking it's a one-time thing that happened in the past. No, we have the most extreme degree of carbon monoxide poisoning with brain injuries. Most people, I wouldn't say most, because people do acquire brain injuries with carbon monoxide poisoning, but to the degree what happened to us was very extreme. And then to have as many re-injuries that we've had, very extreme, because we didn't have proper medical system care. We had, it was actually above the medical system where the center was and how the chambers were being used to get us to where we are today. Because if I didn't make the money I made all my life and do what I did, no, we wouldn't even be alive. We would have been gone years ago. We would have never even made it to where we are today. So without that, no, we wouldn't be alive for sure. We would have been gone years ago. But most people who get poisoned by carbon monoxide poisoning with carbon monoxide, they don't need as many treatments as we've needed. And then they also receive treatment. Most likely they receive some type of treatment initially once they overload at the traditional hospital. So all of those are factors in how this became so excessive with the amount of symptoms, with the longevity of all of it. Those are part of why it's that way. And at the root is my mother's ongoing crimes and the crimes of Beaumont Hospital. So yes, that's what I'm doing. All of these people who are not perceiving my situation properly, it's like really pissing me off, because there's just so much I have to attend to. And then I'm sick of trying to explain to people like the condition itself or what's actually going on. This has been going on every second of every day for the past 7.5 years for me. So the fact that I still have to say something, or if I'm having like a worse day where I'm not really standing up, people aren't comprehending that, and I'm really sick of explaining it. And I'm sick of explaining why I can't do this or why we can't go here or there. I'm really sick of explaining it. And the people around us are so ignorant. It's out of control. Those closest to us are some of the most ignorant. So like, really, I'd rather be left alone and deal with it by myself than have anybody around me who, like, literally nobody understands it. So I'd rather just be alone and figure out how to dig my way up out of the hole that I'm in alone and do all the work myself than trying to keep explaining to different people or the same person. It doesn't matter. A mix of those. It doesn't matter. I'd rather sit here by myself and dig my way up out of it by myself, because everybody's so ignorant. And it's just really irritating, because this has been going on in that extreme manner for 7.5 years. And still people don't get it, because they've all been told delusions, or because they're not perceiving things properly because we're not at a hospital. No, we're not okay. No, we've never been at a hospital. We were never okay. And now I'm forced to live this way. So there's a lot of people's actions who played a role in where the degree of everything is today, because I am further back than I was a couple years ago. And there's nothing I can do about it. And the only thing I can do is try to keep treating to remove each cycle and each load, and try to do it the best I can with the tools I do have left, until I can at least try to get everything resituated, so that someday maybe I can purchase that upgraded chamber. It just has to go that way. And it has to go in the manner in which my body and my brain are functional. And that's what controls everything. The injury itself, all of the injuries, the condition itself, my system, my brain, that's what controls everything that's going on within a day. And it has to be me first, because I'm the one running everything. My son doesn't understand. He does in a sense, but he doesn't understand sense of time. due to his injuries as well since birth. And then he doesn't understand the amount of things that have to be done in the time limits I have for each thing. He doesn't understand it to that degree. But he is picking up a sense of somewhat kind of some of what has to be done in a day. Although he doesn't look at the business aspect of all of it or the financial aspect. So he doesn't see everything else that's intertwined with the things we have to do to our physical bodies. So he is picking up a little bit on that, but it's more all on me. So I have to run by how I feel. So if I'm very sick, if I'm very unwell, then everything stops, because then I can't take care of all those other things. And I've never had somebody be able to help me. I don't know anybody with half of a brain that can step in and assist me with the amount of paperwork that I have, or the emails, or the paperwork online, or the stuff that I'm dealing with in all the different avenues. I don't know of anybody that can assist me. I'm usually the one that assists everybody else when they have issues. So I don't know of anybody that I can call and be like, "Oh, hey, can you come help me with this and this and this and this?" Because usually the people around me, well, yeah, most of the people around me, I'd say 99% of them don't have half the brain to be able to do what I do. They don't have the level of knowledge or understanding to address any of what I have to deal with. And part of the reason for that is my mother's ongoing crimes and me never being around like-minded individuals that are like me due to all of that, due to all of those crimes, all those actions along the way. It led to me being forced to deal with a class of people who are not on the level that I'm on. So there isn't people around me and a proper support system to step in and say, hey, I need help with all this paperwork, or I need help sending 7 emails, or I need you to type this for me. If my brain doesn't work, it just doesn't get done, and there's nothing I can do about it. So there's a lot of issues, and I just wanted to film this video on all of that because it was on my title list to film, and I figured since I really don't feel good in the moment, I wanted to film the video when I don't feel good, because people look at me and think that I'm fine, and I know I probably look mostly fine, but I'm extremely nauseous, and I really don't feel good, and my head hurts. So I wanted to film the video while I feel that way, because people don't recognize it. So I could sit here and tell you until I'm blue in the face, but people still don't comprehend it. But that's where I'm at with things, and yeah, that's kind of why I'm forced to be homebound, where I am with it today. That's a big part of it, because everything that has to be addressed, I only have so much functioning. It is all in my home to address currently where I'm at with it today, or where it's been for the past year or so, year and a half. It's all mostly in my home, where all the work I need to do. So everything I need is here, along with the limited functioning, although it was not that way the entire injury, just the last year and a half. So that is what's going on. That is part of why I have to stay home, because I have to address all these things, and I can't really just disrupt my flow and throw everything off. It's rare that I go somewhere or do anything, because I don't really have the functionality or the time to squeeze that in and attend to something else outside of all these other matters I have to attend to. Now, once some of this stuff gets situated, that might change, because it is slowly moving. It's a lot. So yeah, that's kind of what I have to say to the people around me. But yeah, I'll be back with another one. Thanks. Bye.